Welcome to the Shipping Podcast, where I meet interesting maritime professionals sharing their passion for the shipping industry and their everyday job. I am your host. My name is Lena Gothberg. Hello, Shipping Podcast lovers. Episode 78. We are heading towards episode 100. Welcome, or welcome back, to the Shipping Podcast, where I meet these maritime professionals. But today I'm going to meet someone who isn't a maritime professional, but has actually got the shipping bug. He's got a passion for the shipping industry now, once he has got to know about it. I will be introducing you to Mikael Lind. He is an associate professor at the Research Institutes of Sweden, that is RISE, Viktoria. He is the research manager for sustainable transports, and he is the leader of the Port CDM project. I will leave it to Mikael to tell you a little bit more about what Port CDM stands for and what it's like. But Port CDM is part of the Sea Traffic Management project, which is a huge EU project led by the Swedish Maritime Administration. If you don't tell them, I would say that sea traffic management is like air traffic control for the maritime industry, but more. Don't tell them I said so, because they usually hit me with something when I describe it like that. If you want to learn more about sea traffic management, you can listen to Anders Brödje, who I interviewed in episode number 10. And if you want to hear more about what Mikael is referring to as maritime informatics, listen to episode 6 with Professor Richard Watson. He was one of the first people that I interviewed, and maritime informatics has got a special place in my heart nowadays. So I met Mikael Lind on December the 6th. You will hear that I have a bad voice in this interview. I did lose my voice some days before. But luckily it was Mikael that I met, and he could talk. I mean, he gives lectures. I think this is so interesting. So, I won't keep it from you anymore. This is Mikael Lind. Welcome to the Shipping Podcast. Could you please introduce yourself?
Thank you, Lena. My name is Mikael Lind. I work for RISE Viktoria, that is part of the Research Institute of Sweden. I am an associate professor and also the research manager for sustainable transports, meaning that I'm looking into digitalization strategies for ensuring a high degree of synchronization, harmonization in intermodal transports in different ways. One of my favorites during the last 6 years has been working in the maritime sector. And some of my colleagues, they gave me a t-shirt the other day where it says, "I love ports." And that's what I do. We are talking about a practice that is consisting of 6,000 ports in the world. We have a shipping, in merchandise shipping, we are doing 21 million port calls per year. And there is a lot of opportunities of being innovative by bringing digitalization into the sector where we can make this industry, if I can call it that, more efficient.
How did you come in contact with the maritime industry to start with?
So I started in my job as a researcher at RISE, working with different industrial segments. And one of the first one was the aviation sector. So I got a project where we were supposed to develop Stockholm Arlanda to a world-class airport, empowered by digitalization. If you know the aviation sector in Europe, there has been a lot of investments in something called SESAR. And SESAR is a collaboration project between air traffic management centers in different countries, where you are, one, straightening out the flight corridors so that you can fly the shortest possible distance between two airports, and also introducing collaborative decision-making on airports, where if you start on a plane in Europe going to another place in Europe, you need to have a slot time at the other end so that you can avoid circulating over that. So, being closely associated to air traffic management, I was introduced by the Swedish initiative led by the Swedish Maritime Administration, Sea Traffic Management, And the first project was called Mona Lisa 2.0. And the whole idea from the beginning was that we should contribute with knowledge on digital infrastructures. And then when being engaged in this with a desire to make shipping more efficient, more safe, and more environmentally sustainable, we said that, okay, but if we do not bring in the ports in that situation, this will not be possible to realize. So in Mona Lisa 2.0, we defined the concept of port collaborative decision making that then at that time, and this was 2014, was brought forward and was validated in Port of Valencia and Port of Gothenburg with very successful results, and ending up with that the Sea Traffic Management Validation Project, which was launched under the umbrella of Swedish Maritime Administration again with 43 partners, I think it is, and also 43 million euro in turnover. We became the second largest partner in that whole consortia to bring forward and validate the port CDM concept in 13 ports in Europe. So I love ports again.
I can hear that.
Yeah.
So now you are in the stadium of testing, or?
Yeah, we are in the stadium of testing, and the port, this concept builds upon the idea that if you combine a lot of information sources from different stakeholders, you can enhance the predictability on when things are going to happen. And one of the greatest challenges today in this sector is that ships normally, they come in time and they can adjust the throttle to come in time at least. But most often ports are not ready to serve the ship for the purpose of call. So is there any way that the actors could be more synchronized upon the arrivals of the ships, or at least communicate to the ship that is no use that you speed now in order to get to the port because we are not ready to serve you? And if you take these large ships carrying 18,000 containers, being 400 meters long, etc., they consume 240 tons of fuel for during 24 hours if they drive full speed 23 knots, and they consume 40 tons of fuel if they drive 10 knots. So there's a very, very big saving factor for these big shipping lines. And I also hear now that the biggest shipping lines, they're talking about reducing the turnaround time in ports because they want to have higher utilization of their infrastructure. So we said that, okay, let's see if we can innovate, and also under the possibilities that IT or digital technologies give us, if we can innovate a concept that actually would help the actors, even though that is very distributed and they are very autonomous, if we can help them to become more synchronized so that we can make smarter decisions in principle. So we designed a message format that we are testing. We designed principles of port call optimization that we are testing in these different 13 ports, both in the Mediterranean and in Scandinavia, with very, very positive results at the moment.
I saw a metro map yesterday.
Ah, okay.
Can you please explain that?
Yes. So a port call consists of a number of different events that you need to pass through. You arrive to the traffic area as a ship. You would have tug operations. You might have, in most cases, you have pilot operations. You need to get clearance to get into the port. You have a purpose of call, such as for cargo operations, or you might do bunkering or waste or slop, sludge, etc., etc. And then you are leaving, so that you need to declare that and get permission to leave from the port. And we were very inspired actually by the London subway map. And then we said that, okay, why not make an event chart that is both showing the events and also showing the involved stakeholders. And then you see the enormous complexity of port operations. And especially if you go to these larger ports, maybe doing 100,000, 150,000 port calls per year, you need to be extremely aware of, we need to have a situational awareness of what is happening with the vessel that is being served, and also other vessels that are going to be served or is being served in parallel. So we said that, okay, can we have some kind of generic understanding what a port call means, and then we document that, and then we develop this metro map, which I think has become the signum of what we call port CDM as a sea traffic management concept.
So how have you been received by the ports? How did they react?
So, very interesting. I think that the whole port community of the world has been developed in its own way. There is no port that has the same setup of IT systems of actors in the whole world. And if you want to be contributing to these ports, you either would need to do an enormous system development. And that will not happen in my lifetime and not in my next generation's lifetimes either. The port sector is part of a very distributed ecosystem with autonomous and competing and collaborating actors. So we said that, okay, let's just see if we can build some kind of interoperable platform that would enable us, one, that the different actors' systems are being connected to each other, and also that the ports are being interoperably connected to each other. I mean, there are ships going from one port to another port, and of course they are a part of a network somehow. And also that we can enhance the communication between the ship and the port. Given that, and there are two statements, 2017 is probably the year when digitalization was brought to the maritime sector. Plus that IMO went out and said that we cannot just focus on what is happening at sea. We need to connect people, ports, and ships. Me traveling around all over the world, it seems that we are coming with a concept and a solution that actually is releasing the pressure from the shoulders of this. It is not a solution that means that people will be confronted with new ways or new interfaces and stuff like that. It's rather a way for having an interoperable data stream from many different sources and then inviting application providers to be part of this community. The maritime sector is a very close community in that sense, and what you want to do is that you would like to invite newcomers into this situation. So in that respect, I have very many positive replies now, and it is even so that there are commercial actors coming forward that would like to contribute with this phenomenon. And to mention two examples, one example that I think was very interesting was that when I was working with Port of Gothenburg as the first port, I had one requirement on me, and that is, Michael, please do not come with new front-end services. Not come with not new applications. We have been struggling around and trying to find the right IT solution for us. So do something else. So therefore we created this back-end solution where we connected the different systems and the port actors to each other. We also started up something called Living Labs, where we are meeting all the port call actors in the ports so that they can talk about and see how can we collaborate in a better way so that we optimize the port call for our clients. Clients equal to the visiting ships. And this has been done in all 13 ports and with very positive results where trust in collaboration is created through physical meetings so that it wouldn't be any issue of doing the digital collaboration. The other question that I'm being asked about is, how can I be sure of that this investment that we presumably would do, because we want to rely on automatic connectors, I do not believe in that everybody will manually input this. So we developed a format and a standardized interface for the different systems to, at every time there is an event change, you submit a message to this information sharing platform, and that is being shared among the others. In order to know that this investment is worthwhile, and also going back to application providers, if they provide an application that is going to run on this kind of environment, can they be sure of that this is going to be used in the future? We created something called the International Port CDM Council with very prominent actors or associations from the maritime sector, who then maintains, one, the Port CDM concept, and secondly, the message standards that are extremely essential that these are followed in order to create this interoperable environment of ports. At the same time, we do not affect the competitiveness of each port in this way, because each port will have their own ways of doing things, and the only thing that we are just saying is that we are providing a platform that will enable them to do better port call optimizations.
So how do you see the future? I mean, how do you see this when it's all up and running?
So there are two different things that is happening. When bringing in digitalization to the maritime sector means that there will be more connectivity. We are talking about very many connected devices. My vision is that we will digitally connect or digital twin a bollard, which would mean that the bollard, when the ship is all fast, you can actually measure the pressure on the bollard and you can say that, okay, it's all fast, instead of somebody having to report that in. There are movements, for sure. It is said that the optimization capabilities or possibilities, opportunities of a port throughout the world is about 25% of the time being spent by the ships. That is not good enough. And we have made calculations for large shipping lines where we had a business case of this shipping line using 4 ports, 5 ships, and utilizing 5 typical legs that it would sail the ship. And if you would reduce the turnaround time in each port by 17%, and if the ship is not fully loaded, you can take away one ship. So one part, then what this drives, the whole digitalization issue, or this bringing digitalization to the sector, is that the world will become more harmonized. And the concept of Port CDM, who elaborates on the combination of very many different information sources, would then increase the predictability, which is something that the whole sector is lacking of at the moment. What we have been doing for many years is to report on when things happened, not when things are about to happen. And I think that was one of the beauties that was brought forward by Sea Traffic Management, where we started to communicate intentions of when things are going to happen, how I plan for doing things. So the competition among ports will raise, that's for sure. And I think that the ports that are adopting more collaborative manners are the winners in this. And also that ports are collaborating with other ports, with the ships, etc. So an enhanced degree of collaboration in the sector. I think that's very important.
I think it's interesting because I see the same thing on the shipping side with the shipping community. If there's a difference between shipping and maritime, I also meet with a lot of people who has discovered the maritime industry, the maritime space, as something where they want to be part of, coming into our community or whatever we should call it. And do you see the same thing in the ports, on the port side?
I see, and there are newcomers popping up here now. And I think that the whole idea about being able to expose new data streams to externals, of course controlled by the ones that is a source of information, would enable numerous providers of new systems. You have in different parts of the world, you have accelerators, you have innovation hubs and so on. That is of extremely strong interest and also investors to actually come into this sector in a good way.
Yeah, I spoke with Matthew Tillman at Haven, and he said, you don't have enough self-confidence in this industry because you don't realize how attractive you are. And in a way, I think we need to convey that to the people in the shipping industry. Because in a way, we are closed, we are talking to each other, and we are not inviting new people. And it's sad in a way, because I want more people to get the shipping bug that we have.
Me personally, I think that it's a lot of business opportunities in this sector. And you need to also realize that most of the things that we are wearing or using in our daily life has been on board a ship. So it is driving the world economy. The sad story is if we come into a situation where there are too many proprietary solutions being developed, not inviting others to come into the market. Due to the fact that I'm also a researcher, I have also brought in I'm an information systems researcher, and that is a very generic research. We normally look into very many different modes of transport, for example, and digitalization's role in that. But what I did was that I also brought in a separate specialization into the information systems field that we call maritime informatics. And I think that is the new way of thinking for the maritime sectors. And that is actually attracting a lot of researchers, or applied researchers at least, to come closer into this section.
Good.
Yep.
Really good.
So I'm very pro-maritime.
So you have got a bug now.
Yeah.
You're with us.
Thanks for inviting me, I say.
No, I think once you get it, it's hard to get out, in a way. To get rid of it.
Yeah. Maybe it's also, what you also see in this sector is, if you go to ports, for example, the long tail distribution of the amount of port calls is very steep in the beginning. I mean, there are some few ports that are having very many port calls. Out of the 10 largest ports in the world, 7 of them are in China. So there's a lot of power from these sectors, and including also the biggest shipping lines in the world, which means that they are highly influential in what is happening. On the other side, which I also think is interesting, is that now probably the largest digital provider in the world, IBM, and the largest shipping company in the world, Maersk, is joining forces in blockchain technologies. So apparently things are moving at this point.
Yeah,
which I think is good.
I did an episode with Norbert, so we are going to listen to him as well about that.
Interesting.
But I mean, STM and Port CDM, you are also suffering from the fact that we are doing in the shipping industry with the visibility. Who knows about it if you're not totally devoted to it? How do we become more visible?
That was a hard question. I think that it's on very many different levels. One is, of course, that actors that are using it, adopting it, etc., are spreading the word. That I think is one. It's a network effect phenomena, so to say. On one hand. On the other hand is that we have also different ports, different shipping companies, etc., that starts to know about it very well. You have authorities in the big shipping nations and also flag states that starts to know about it. So that is approaching the sector, so to say. And then you have all these other channels of communication, such as like Port Strategy or Port Technology International Journal, etc., so that are very receptive in publishing things that would actually enable the sector to bring up more digitalization. And then, of course, the third or the last thing is to get different associations such as IALA or IHMA, etc., to also be part of the community of being more associated to ports. And I think that the tradition, again, has been very much on what happens on board the ship has been the focus for the maritime sector. And now suddenly we are taking the challenge of integrating almost supply chain management, logistic coordination efforts inside the port, which I don't think that has been part of the maritime thinking before, and integrating that with what's happened at sea. I mean, just take e-navigation. Sometimes I have problems in expressing that it is no use to do all the e-navigation aspects if we do not involve the end state, meaning that you want to go to a port and you want to know what happens in the port.
And also maybe the cargo owners, the buyers of transport.
Mm-hmm. Which are, of course, at top of the value chain. I mean, if you don't have any transport buyers, then we don't need any ports and we don't need any ships. So there's what I would call an inseparable trinity between cargo owner / transport buyer and shipping company and ports.
Because when it comes to the environmental side of shipping, people say, well, it's the day when the cargo owners put pressure on the shipping industry that we will see something more happening. I think that the maritime industry is doing a lot of things on their own, but in a way it might be the same thing with this one. I don't know.
In my world of thinking, so to say, is that you need to always search for the one that is paying the money.
Yeah.
And of course, if you take a port, there are cargo going in and out via hinterland and cargo going in and out via ships, or when it comes to cargo transports. And then we have the cruise, of course, and so on. So if you don't have the shipping lines, and if you don't have any hinterland operators, then the port doesn't have any incentives to exist. And a shipping line, why do they exist? They exist because people want to transport goods from point A to point B. So therefore, you're absolutely right. I think that we need to address all of these three dimensions of stakeholders. What becomes very interesting, and which I think that is a next era, so to say here, is also to integrate our understanding, our conception, our situational awareness of what happens at sea and in ports with logistics and supply. And that's one part of what we have been doing in the International Port CDM Council, is also to align the message standards or message formats that we are using for optimizing port call operations, also together with message formats that is being used for supply chain management. And one very, very good actor in that is GS1, who is having something called the EPCIS format. And by combining an EPCS data stream with the port call messages, then you will suddenly be able to say something about when a certain parcel, a certain piece of goods would be at a certain place, which I think is fantastic if we can get to that. And think about which new applications that can be coming out of that.
Yeah. Very interesting. I think we're living exciting times, and I'm happy to be part of it.
Yeah, me too.
There's so many things, but it's like, when I first started to work with the STM, I thought, well, this is like an elephant. How do I eat an elephant? I need to start bit by bit and try to understand what that is. Yeah. So in a way, it's hard to communicate this to other people.
I think that one of the challenges is really that you need to, shipping is global. It's not a Swedish phenomena. It is a global phenomena. So one thing is that you need to find the enablers for being global in this as well. And I think that from our point of view, being part of RISE as a very large research organization, and RISE then being governed by the Swedish government and also then having incentives and assignments to the Swedish Maritime Administration, I think that Sweden can play a role in this, in contributing to the world as the type of country that we are.
Isn't that usually what we do?
But the thing is that to be able to get these kind of new innovative concepts to actually boil up on the agenda for the top management of the country, I think that is enormously important. And I'm very happy to see that Sweden thinks that what we are doing now is something that we can contribute to the world with.
Congratulations on the award. What was that?
Oh, yes. I was in Singapore last week, and on behalf of the STM Validation Project, I received the award of the Digital Enabler, I think, of the year, I guess.
So I'm talking to the right person?
I hope so. I'm trying to be as creative and as sustainable as possible. So that's,
I know. Who would you be curious to listen to in the shipping podcast? Who do you think I should meet the next?
I think that in the lines of what we have been talking about, I think it would be enormously interesting to talk to large new companies popping up that would utilize the shipping sector in its transports. And two companies that I would immediately think of, and that would be a dream to listen to the strategies that they have in relation to the shipping industry in the future, would be people from Amazon and people from Alibaba.
I was afraid you were going to say that.
And that will be very, very interesting to see how they recognize the needs that they have in the digital connectivity in relation to the sector, as to be followed with their business strategies.
I agree. Now we've got a challenge.
Please, Lena, write some important emails and see what happens.
Yeah, we'll see what I can do. Yeah. I won't promise anything. Thank you very much for taking the time, Mikael. I know you're busy. We've been trying to do this for a long while, but now we understand. Yeah. You are the enabler of the year, so.
Thanks a lot.
It's exciting what he's talking about. I will be sharing the metro map. That describes the port call in a tube map in such a great way. I think you will love it. So in the last episode, I asked for some help from you, the listeners, and I got some response. I got a response from a young man on the other side of the world, and we will be collaborating on the marketing side of the shipping podcast. I can see and I can hear that he has got even more ideas than I have, but more people are welcome on board. Just send me an email to hello@shippingpodcast.com and we'll figure something out. I have told you that I am planning to do some changes with the podcast. At the moment, I'm preparing an expert panel on the new sulfur cap 2020. But it's going to be expert panels on different topics moving forward. I'm excited myself to see how this works out, what you think about it, and what I think about it. Then I'm planning to go to Athens, for more reasons than one. But if you have any ideas of great people to interview whilst in Athens, please let me know. I will be going there mid-March. So now that we know so much about the port and the digitalization that is coming there as well, what are your thoughts? What do you think about it? If you got any questions or any shout-outs to give, the Shipping Podcast is in every social media channel. That is Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Please let me know what you think about it. It's so much more fun for me to do this when I get your feedback. I love feedback. I think maybe I should get myself a t-shirt with that text on it. I love feedback. But until then, from me to you, over and out. Thank you for listening to the Shipping Podcast. Don't forget to tell everyone that you meet that there is a shipping podcast available and that they should download it and listen to the maritime professionals who are sharing their passion for the shipping industry.